Hey everyone, welcome. I'm so glad you could join me today. We've got a seriously fascinating explainer lined up. We are going to dive deep into some incredibly profound historical accounts sourced straight from sacred history. We'll be looking at the lives of 22 prophets, but we're not just looking at their triumphs. We're going to examine the intense, often heartbreaking trials they endured. All right, let's jump right in. So here's a massive question for you to think about. How did the absolute greatest human beings react to unimaginable grief? You know, we usually think of these deeply spiritual, chosen individuals as being kind of immune to regular worldly suffering, right? Well, the source text we're breaking down today completely flips that idea on its head. It asks us to look closely at how these historical figures, people beloved by the divine, faced devastating grief, total isolation and betrayal, and more importantly, how they managed to survive it without losing their hope. Which brings us to our first main section, prophets and the history of trials. Listen, the trials these 22 prophets faced, they weren't just some abstract philosophical tests. We are talking about intensely human, relatable experiences. Pure heartbreak, complete betrayal by their own families, brutal mockery from their societies, having literally everything stripped away physically and materially, and being asked to make the ultimate sacrifices. The source material makes one thing crystal clear. Loneliness and massive tests of faith are universal. They happen to the best of us. Let's zoom in on that first point with our next section, separation and grief of loved ones. It's genuinely fascinating how the text groups these unique historical accounts together around this shared human experience of sheer isolation. Take Adam, for example. He was exiled from paradise, right? Grieving that separation and literally terrified of divine anger for years until he was finally forgiven. Then you've got Lut. Talk about the ultimate domestic betrayal. His own wife actually sided with a disobedient nation right as their town was being completely destroyed. And Yusuf, his own brothers, his flesh and blood, were so jealous they threw him into a well. He ended up unjustly jailed in total dark isolation long before he ever became the treasurer of Egypt. And you really feel the heartbreak of these trials when you look at the exact words they used. Listen to this. My son, come with us. Those are the desperate, agonizing pleas of Nuh. The text tells us Nuh patiently preached to his people for roughly 950 years. Try to wrap your head around that. But honestly, his most painful moment wasn't the mockery he endured for 9 centuries. It was watching his own son refuse to get on the ark, drowning in the floodwaters literally right in front of him. We see a similar, crushing kind of grief with Yaqub. His sons lied right to his face, telling him Yusuf was eaten by a wolf. The text points out that Yaqub wept into the night, crying for his son for so long that he actually went blind from the sorrow. And yet, amidst all that devastation, he says this, I only complain of my suffering and my grief to Allah. That is absolutely crucial. The takeaway here is that experiencing profound, devastating human sorrow doesn't somehow mean your faith is weak. They can absolutely exist side by side. Okay, let's pivot a bit to the public sphere. Next up, mockery and disobedience of nations. There's a very clear, stark pattern in history here, especially when we look at Hud, Saleh, and Shuaib. Hud tried to warn the Ad nation, who were incredibly powerful and arrogant, and they basically just laughed at him, mocking his perceived weakness. Saleh brought a literal miracle camel to the people of Thamud, and what did? They deliberately killed it. Shuaib spent his time patiently trying to stop his people from ripping each other off with rigged weights and measures, and he was completely ridiculed for it. For all three, they endured relentless public rejection and, as the text outlines, divine destruction. We're talking fierce winds, earthquakes, and severe punishments inevitably followed. Now, I want you to imagine achieving this massive, historic victory, only to have the people you saved instantly turn their backs on it. That's exactly what happened to Musa. He freed his people from the brutal tyranny of Pharaoh. He literally parted the sea. But the second he left to go up the mountain, the nation immediately started worshiping a golden calf. His brother Harun tried desperately to stop them, but they just wouldn't listen. Can you imagine the frustration, the sheer grief and anger both of these prophets must have felt watching their people regress so incredibly fast? It's a massive psychological trial. And that brings up the profound loneliness of being the only one standing for the truth in a totally corrupt society. Idris grieved deeply, staying up at night praying for society lost in worldly desires. Yahya persistently spoke truth to a tyrant, and he was literally martyred for it. And Isa? He healed the sick, he raised the dead by divine permission, but despite all those undeniable miracles, he was still violently rejected and plotted against. Moving right along into another major theme in the source text, great sacrifices and patience. The contrast presented here is just staggering. Picture Ibrahim. He stood so firmly against idol worship that his entire city, including his own father, turned against him. And they didn't just exile him, they threw him into a massive, blazing fire. Just imagine the absolute terror of that exact moment. But the text highlights that his complete unwavering reliance on the divine turned that terrifying fire cold and entirely safe. It's such a striking visual of how absolute trust completely neutralizes worldly terror. But, Ibrahim's trials didn't stop there. Far from it. Later in life, he faced what has to be the ultimate test, a divine command given in a dream to sacrifice his incredibly beloved son, Ismail. When Ibrahim actually told his son about this, Ismail didn't run away. He didn't argue. He just said, "Oh, my father, do as you are commanded." The source describes both the father and the son in tears, absolutely heartbroken, yet completely willing to submit. They passed the test, and a ram was miraculously sent in Ismail's place at the very last second. Then we have the story of Ayub, which is honestly a masterclass in handling total material devastation. This was a man who had it all: vast wealth, a large family, perfect health. And he lost absolutely all of it, every single thing. He was struck with a severe physical illness, and eventually society just abandoned him. Yet throughout all of this, he steadfastly refused to complain to anyone but his creator. His patience wasn't just strong, it was practically unshakable. And the text gives us the exact prayer Ayub made during the absolute peak of his suffering. He said, "Indeed, adversity has touched me, and you are the most merciful of the merciful." Look at how beautifully humble that is. He doesn't angrily demand his health back. He simply states his condition and acknowledges divine mercy. And the amazing part? The text tells us this very prayer resulted in the miraculous restoration of everything he had lost. We see another incredible rescue through repentance with Yunus. He got so frustrated with his stubborn, disobedient people that he actually walked away from his city. He eventually ended up being swallowed by a massive fish. Talk about isolation, right? From the deepest, darkest, most terrifying isolation imaginable, the bottom of the ocean in the belly of a whale, he called out with this powerful realization: "There is no deity except you. Indeed, I have been of the wrongdoers." The point here is that sincere repentance can cut through literally the darkest depths imaginable. This leads us to a chronological climax in the text. Let's look at the escalating hardships and the patience of Prophet Muhammad. When you look at this timeline, the compounding tragedy is really overwhelming. In his early years in Mecca, Prophet Muhammad wasn't just facing social rejection. He was physically attacked. The text notes he was choked and thorns were deliberately placed in his path. Then we hit the 10th year of his mission, which historians literally call the year of sorrow. Why? Because he lost his two greatest earthly supporters back to back, his fiercely protective uncle Abu Talib and his beloved wife Khadijah. Shortly after that massive loss, he went to the town of Taif seeking refuge and anyone who would listen. Instead, the townspeople brutally stoned him until his shoes were actually filled with his own blood. And what happened next perfectly illustrates his character. Standing there, bleeding, completely devastated both physically and emotionally at Taif, he didn't curse them. He didn't wish for their destruction. Instead, he made this incredible prayer: "O Allah, guide them, for they do not know." It's just this unbelievable moment of mercy, completely outshining the darkest kind of trauma. So, what does this all mean for us? Let's move to our final section, the lesson learned from trials. The circumstances of these 22 trials vary wildly, but their required response? It's always exactly the same. Take Prophets Dawud and Sulaiman. Sulaiman literally commanded jinn, birds in the wind. They possessed the ultimate royal power, yet the text described them crying in fear and absolute humility before the divine. Now flip that. Contrast them with Zechariah. He had no power. He was facing severe physical weakness, old age, and the deep sorrow of not having children. But he maintained unbreakable hope and prayed constantly and was eventually granted a son, Yahya. So whether you are tested by having supreme power or tested by extreme, helpless weakness, the successful response is always humility and reliance on God. And really, that brings us to the ultimate thesis drawn from all these historical accounts. Sorrow, loneliness, they are just a part of the human experience. It's inevitable, it's gonna happen. But the one who places their complete, unwavering trust in the divine never truly loses. Grief is for sure going to happen, but absolute reliance guarantees ultimate triumph. I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on today. We've just walked through 22 examples of phenomenal, history-altering resilience against impossible odds. So, when your own world inevitably goes dark, whose unbreakable patience are you going to remember? Take a moment to really reflect on that. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and keep learning.